Big Trouble in Little China is quite possibly the most unheralded truth movie of all. And this is by one John Carpenter, who you may know is the one who made They Live. Before he made They Live, he made this gem, Big Trouble in Little China, that nobody seems to really know what to think about. And that is for a number of reasons. Is it fantasy? Is it action? Is it comedy? Yeah, but it's more. Oh yes, it's more.
See? That was nothing. But that's how it always begins. Very small.
Now, is it to the level where Russian Vids says it's a documentary? Or, well, Rowdy Piper. Well, I don't know. I don't think so at all. But it's so laden with truth. It's got truth written all over it. It's kind of an in-your-face truth movie, the kind through which powers greater than any of us work to reveal things in the form of art through layers and layers of truth that even the man or men and women who made it themselves are not aware. John Carpenter himself isn't aware that there's retro-causality or predictive programming, or perhaps mere coincidence.
Now the truth is here.
The creature, the floating creature that looks like a COV identification drawing CGI thing, looks just like that. Yeah. It's just, and we'll get to it. We'll get to all of it. Hopefully this won't be longer than the movie itself, but I'm not making any promises. I do promise that I will give spoiler alerts, or a spoiler alert, hopefully before it's too late, but consider yourself warned now anyway, in case I don't. Now, the movie starts off with, just right off the bat, no real intro or anything, it starts off with just simply something so profound in its simplicity, where there's a character named Pinstripe Lawyer, and he says, okay, so now, let me just get it right, because it's such a good quote. Bear with me here. It's such a good quote that I'm going to get it word for word, according to the closed captions. And he said, what I'd like to do today is get your version of what happened. And then the man says, oh, you mean the truth? And he's such a good actor, this gentleman. Is it Victor Wong? I don't know. Let's see. Yes, it is Victor Wong. He's the bus driver, and he speaks a lot of truth on his tour bus. Of course, it's not a normal tour bus that goes through San Francisco, Chinatown. He talks about that. But the Pinstripe Lawyer asks him, so in this beginning scene, which is very revealing in itself, asks him about what is magic. Because he said, half a city block explodes into green flames and all hell breaks loose. Victor Wong is such a good actor. I really love this masterful role if you watch his eyes in this part of the movie. It's just superb the way that he acts this part out.
What happened?
Oh, you mean the truth?
Of course. First, just state your name and your occupation for the record.
Oh, a.k.a. Shen, bus driver.
Bus driver, what kind of bus and where, please?
Oh, tour bus. Bus for tourists. San Francisco, Chinatown.
Thank you. You could be in a great deal of trouble. Half a city block explodes in a ball of green flame. Green flame! I mean, so all hell is breaking loose here. And there are people who say you're involved, that you might be responsible, that you're a very dangerous man. Now, you really believe in magic?
In Chinese black magic.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Are you still serious about this? And monsters and ghosts as well, I suppose.
Oh, sure. And sorcery.
And I suppose that you expect me to believe in sorcery as well.
Of course.
Why?
Because it's real.
How can I know that, Mr. Shen?
How?
Yes, how? Help me out here. Please, how?
There's so much comedy in this movie because Jack Burton is more of a sidekick or an anti-hero, and that's kind of the joke. But the guy said, there are a lot of things that happen here that just don't make sense to me. Like, do you really believe in magic? And he just gives a knowing smile and he says, oh, you mean Chinese black magic? He says, oh, absolutely. And he's like, are you still serious about this? And then his indignation, his amused indignation to that. Like, are you serious that you believe in magic? Oh yes. like you don't know? You know, it's just perfect, you know. And he said, yeah, monsters, ghosts, and he's like, oh yeah, sure, and sorcery. And so, yeah, it gets a little cartoonish after a while, but it's a big old truth drop where he goes, why do I believe in it? Because it's real. And then he's like, can you show me how, you know, and he's like, okay, and he's like, I'm thinking of a way because there's so many ways. And then he just, holds up his hands and he shoots electricity between his hands through the air. So it's kind of like atmospheric electricity. And he's like, you know, so this is how it begins. It's very small. And then it cuts to the scene of the Pork Chop Express.
Jack Burton and the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Like I told my last wife, I says, honey, I never drive faster than I can see. Besides that, it's all in the reflexes.
Which is Jack Burton. He's a truck driver driving through, you know, like countryside leading into San Francisco back when that was the case, you know. Back when people were free in California. And he's just spouting off his stream of consciousness in in the CB radio. That is like free speech, you know, and he's just talking. So it's kind of like very truth-oriented. And the music playing, that is something that John Carpenter did as well. But he mentions, or this like in the lyrics to the video, the song he sings, I think the name of the song is Pork Chop Express. Yeah, you could say, you know, he's trying to do like a Richard Wagner Gesamtkunstwerk. You know, I do some of that myself, but really what drives that usually would be economy and, you know, profits maybe. But for someone like him with the kind of budget that he had, you know, he's working with Kim Cattrall and Kurt Russell, you know, before they were huge stars. I mean, these types of movies that kind of made them. But he still has a major Hollywood budget here, and he's doing well with it. He wouldn't have to make his own music, but he does. I think part of the reason is so he could put in more control and put in more, like, truth drops in there. And so he does mention truth, actually literally the word truth, that he did for the movie, and the music video he did that I saw. So it's like, just very, very clear from John Carpenter himself that it's having to do with truth, when in fact the movie itself on many other levels is a farcical comedy. You know, it's really, you could say, well, elementally it's about truth where the hero is actually kind of the anti-hero. You know, he appears to be the hero, he looks the part, but he sucks at everything he does, comically so, but not to the point that it's so slapstick that the audience totally gets that. I mean, I think a lot of people who watch the movie kind of think that he is the hero, especially in the beginning. You know, they say, well, we're in his debt, you know, we owe him a great service, but they don't really. He kind of didn't do crap, except unless you consider comic relief.
Alone in this universe.
He's worried about the money the whole time, and it's not even a lot of money. He's just a complete, it would be a complete disappointment if you didn't see him filling the role that he's filling. So then they have this airport scene, and it just reminds me of how things were before 9/11 with the airports, and you could just drive up, park wherever, walk up right up to where the gate is where people, you know, it could be the baggage return or the terminal gate where they're getting off the plane. And they just didn't have these separations they weren't all worried about.
Don't.
Don't what?
Lords of Death, street gang, punks from Chinatown. This isn't good.
And that's where they introduce Kim Cattrall, who you may know her from Sex and the City, where she plays a character that I think that the Mandela effect there should be that everybody should think that it was sluts in the city, but whatever. But anyway, as unappealing as that character may be, she was in other roles. I had seen her in Star Trek, one of the Star Trek movies. She played a Klingon, which isn't very, I don't know, attractive, I guess. And in Mannequin, she was a little bit better, but in this movie, she's just extremely attractive. It's really amazing. Anyway. The point of that is that in the end, spoiler alert again, you know, in the end of the movie, he walks away like he doesn't even like he's going to get the girl she wants to go with or whatever, and he's just like, no, what? Do I get paid for this or no? Or like he's the cool, like it's going to be cool and masculine to like walk away from her, you know, like, dude, you got the girl, just, you know, that type of thing. You know, for nothing, just to be on the road and spout off his stream of consciousness while eating a Subway sandwich, driving his pork chop express. But anyway, in this scene, it's Mr. Egg Shen driving his tour bus, which is called, I think it's called Egg Yang Tours, or Egg Foo Yang Tours. That's the name of it. And he does some truth drops here, so I'll just let this play.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mr. Egg Shen with this wonderful tour this morning. Sit back and enjoy yourself, see? Long time ago, Chinese men with gold rush fever flooded into California. We call Gamsan, mountain of gold, see? Leaving behind their wives and children. Working for years to complete the Transcontinental Railroad, saving all their pennies. And then they send for the families to help build this beautiful Chinatown you see outside your window this fine warm day.
Sit back and enjoy yourselves as he's driving through Chinatown. He said, a long time ago, Chinese men with gold rush fever flooded into California. We call mountain of gold. See? Leaving behind their wives and children. Working for years to complete the Transcontinental Railroad, saving all their pennies, and then they sent for their families to help build this beautiful Chinatown you see outside your window this fine, warm day. Sounds like a tale, right? The way he says it is so sarcastic. It's like he's just bullshitting these over, you know, like obese tourists with like cameras and, you know. And he almost runs into Jack's truck head on, and it's just so funny. The way he's bouncing and screaming and yelling at his eyes. It's just such a good actor. That's Victor Wong. Then it gets into the city, the stage set that they built, which was used in a number of different things, like different music videos and things like that. It's just a beautiful set that they built for this movie. And I had learned that Kurt Russell had learned how to drive the truck a little bit because he had to drive it on the set in the shots. So that's no simple task for somebody to learn that, to drive. But this scene here where they fight in the town, where the gangs face off, inspired I don't know how many different video games like Street Fighter and all kinds of different ones, you know. And they are, it inspired, so this movie, in fact, I think inspired so many kind of quasi Chinese or just like generic Asian, like American Asian artwork, music, movies, cartoons, comics, all kinds of different things. Video games, of course, yes. And all kinds of artwork, and the list goes on and on. So it's just a seminal movie in that respect. And then really the scene where they have these different like demigod fighters appear where they're fighting using magic and stuff like that. It is both comical and artistic, very forward thinking. But I think there were some truth drops in it because of the elements of electricity and water. And it's like technology. They're working for somebody who is supposed to be 1,000 years old, their boss, and the reason that he is kind of like a curse, but he's got all the old world knowledge built up, and he's not fully human. He's a cryptid or a kind of a ghostly apparition in some ways, but he certainly has powers. But he's limited to what he can do.
No questions, just get out of here, Jack, get out of here!
There's a certain protection that is afforded to the innocent, the ones who don't affiliate with some side. You know, it doesn't matter the sides because it's like a Hegelian dialectic, you know. If you pick a side, you lose.
I think it was Lo Pan! Who?
You have to be above it. And the fighting in the movie, when it gets to that point where they're rescuing people and that type of thing, there's a lot of alchemical stuff in there. And the main thing that I got from that was the one character, the character's name I think is Wang. And he said that he's ready because his mind, his body, and his spirit are one. You don't have to be the best at everything. You just have to be pure in your conviction and determination to do it, and you find a way, it can happen. And so that was something definitely true. I think that they showed, and then they also show, like in the fight scene later on, they kind of power up, and that was so conducive to video games. There's so much stuff in this conducive to like the creation of video games. In fact, it was such of a powerful effect that I think it created role-playing games, board games, like turn-based board games, and like tactical type games. And there's one scene in here where they're fighting using magic, and they kind of create these like shadow selves, these avatars that face off. One's one color, one's another, and they do like a samurai battle in the air as projections of their consciousness. And it's just so advanced in that way. You know, you see that in movies. This, of course, inspired a lot of shows that I like the TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is kind of a, I guess it could call it anime. A lot of people say it's not anime, but cartoon. But it's for kids, but it's also for adults. It's very good. It's so good. I mean, I'd recommend it. And you know, it starts off, you got to give it a few episodes, it gets so good. Anyway, so they introduce these three fighters like thunder and rain and lightning, and they have these special hats that cover their heads, and it's so well done, so well acted, so comical, but also there's the truth in it, you know, where they're using the elements. A lot of it heralds back to the old world. And so that is something that becomes a theme starting off here, so far ahead of its time as far as truth movements go. I think that's why we need to revisit some of these works of art that contain all these layers of truth, because there are probably many, many things woven in, maybe not even known by the director himself or the writer, but are there because it's just resonating in tune with truth, the frequency of truth. So when this came out, I was a little kid, and I don't know if I saw it on VHS for the first time, probably. I didn't go to the theater that much. And this is the scene that gripped me, where because it seems like a regular movie almost up to this point, and then they have the fight, the street fight, the gangs fight, and then it gets crazy, and the guys come down with electricity, and they've got like technology with the way the knives go up to their hands, and it makes like a mechanical sound. Their movements, you know, I think they had them up on like dollies, or, you know, they're not the way they move. These like demigods or ghost warriors or whatever they are were not quite walking. They kind of glide a little bit. They're kind of on wires, not to the level of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but more subtly, in a better way, in my opinion. Better, you know. The director, I heard John Carpenter talking about it and saying that it was nothing like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which he said, you know, great movie, and I saw it too. But to me, that was over the top. It's like, okay, it's like I can't suspend my disbelief for that because they're on freaking wires. They're on wires. You know, I kept thinking of Chris Farley on Saturday Night Live, you know, playing like the low grade news reporter who's like complaining why he doesn't get the main role as anchor because, you know, maybe I'm not good. You know, he's making air quotes. Maybe I'm not the best at personal hygiene. You know, maybe I have missing teeth, or I wear clothes that don't fit me. I have mustard stains on my shirt, and I have mayonnaise stains on my pants that maybe they aren't mayonnaise. And then he's like, what's happening? And then he gets lifted up and he's up on the wires. He's like, hey, get me down. Classic Chris Farley. That's what I was kind of thinking of during the 3 or 4 hours of watching Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Which, by the way, that was a Mandela effect for me that I haven't seen anybody talk about yet. But Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, when I saw it, I am absolutely 100% positive certain that that movie was the longest movie I'd ever seen in my life, which means it was every bit of 3 hours. Like, I think it was, if just as off the top of my head, when I thought about it before, I came up with the number, I think this is the same number. It's like 3 hours and 10 minutes, that movie. 3 hours and 10 minutes. When I saw it in the theater when it came out, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I think it was like the year 2000 maybe. And I've looked at it since then, and I don't know. I think it's down. It's like a regular movie, like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Like not even 2 hours. That's crazy. But I just remember it was just like endless wire fighting. Anyway, this scene, when I was watching this as a kid, this scene is what gripped me because it got like, holy crap, this is different and cool because these guys are these ghost warriors and they're fighting and they've got powers of throwing electricity, and then they have this technology like things that are on like power tools, motors, these metal things that spin off rings and like a fan blade, and it's just really awesome that way. And they're like invincible because they got shot with guns and they didn't get hurt. So, but then he's driving and it's like there's innocence because he's not with the gang, they're not after him, and he's driving and Jack is honking his horn and he drives right into these impossible to kill ghost warriors, but he's morally and karmic. The karma of him is he's trying to do what's right. He isn't doing, he's trying to warn them. He's hitting the horn, he doesn't want to hurt them or kill them. He just wants to get out of there, and they respect that, like an animal, like you respect an animal's distance or whatever because it's a dangerous animal, but you don't need to kill it or something because it's venomous or whatever. You just respect its distance, right? And that's how they were, even though it's kind of reversed, they could have totally killed him, but maybe they can't because he's protected, by karma. But then Lo Pan, the main evil dude, the ghost figure, again, spoiler alert again, because he's the spirit being, warrior being of this rich old man, 1,000-year-old man puppet guy or whatever. Well, he appears in front of him and Jack honks his horn, he doesn't want to run him over, and he hits his brakes and he's smiling like, come on, go ahead, and he hits his brakes, but he can't stop in time. He does hit him, runs him over kind of, and then he stops and he gets out to check on him because he's just a good guy. He's not like, even a good person might be like, okay, the guy's got to be dead. I just want to get out of here. He doesn't keep driving. He doesn't keep trying to get out of there. And I think that kind of goodwill gesture protects him kind of in this movie. So it doesn't follow Murphy's Law, where Murphy's Law is no good deed goes unpunished, but but that's a little more cynical. This, I think, is borrowing out a lot of truth from how things are in this realm now. And he goes, checks on him, and then he's standing there, and it's just so iconic in this part because he's all dressed to the nines in this weird, like, geisha-type makeup. There's nothing about the movie with the Oriental and the Chinese aspects and art and cultural, religious symbolism and art, whatever it is. There's nothing about it that is genuine or authentic or matching up with official history or anything like that, nor does it follow any kind of systematic history. Like it mixes all kinds of different things. Like it's mostly Chinese, but it's like what area of China or what part of China or what time, what dynasty or whatever. No, it doesn't do that. It's literally just like, I think one of the dresses I saw somebody wearing, it was Vietnamese, it doesn't do that. It isn't trying to do that. John Carpenter wasn't trying to do that. And I thought it was interesting that he caught some flack. I heard him saying that, he caught some flack and had to deal with some trouble, like big trouble in Hollywood or whatever, where he had people going after him from these like groups that represent Asian interests or Chinese interests or whatever, like these anti-defamation groups, like, oh, you're not, you aren't qualified to represent our culture. You have to have us come in and talk to you, and you need to come and apologize, and all this kind of stuff before the movie was even out. And he's still making the movie, and he said that he was, well, it may have been after, but he was talking to some of the actors, like the guys who played the martial art, like ghost warrior guys, who were in their own rights huge stars of film and celebrities in their own right from like Hong Kong. One of the guys was a martial artist, and he trained the Hong Kong police. These are big, huge, important celebrities in China, some of them. And so, he went and asked them, because they were in all kinds of different like martial arts movies, and fantasy films, like in the film industry over there. And John Carpenter asked them, and they said, no, everything's fine, like whatever. Come on, it's a movie, it's like comic book stuff. It's all good. It's all good. Don't worry about it. So, so that was it. But I just thought that was funny. But this scene where he faces off with Jack, and he's not going to kill Jack or whatever, he just looks at him, and he makes the most triggered face. I was going to use it in some of my videos already. I haven't gotten around to it, or thought of it at the right time. I thought of it at different times. But just like if there is a face that demonstrates cognitive dissonance, it's him. When he starts twitching and gets angry, and then light comes out of his mouth and his eyes. So I thought it was funny, like they were giving John Carpenter a hard time because he's not representing Asian culture and the religions of the country. Like what religion is that? It's not even Jainism or anything. Okay, look, he's not saying that Chinese or Asians in general, when they get triggered, have light come out of their mouth and their eyes that blind the onlooker. But there is some truth there, because Jack gets blinded by it, blinded by the light coming from the triggered guy's face, and his friend Wang takes him over this, like off to the side, and there's puddles on the ground from rain, and he splashes water in his eyes, and he said, okay, your vision will come back in a little bit after that. And so it's like the healing effects of water there. So there's that. It's kind of like a baptism too. So little elements, I just pay attention to those. There's the scene, after the action, and he's trying to recover his truck, talking on the phone, and they're talking about Lo Pan, the guy who ran over the truck. He's like, big, crazy guy with funny clothes on and light coming out of his eyes and mouth, and then there's like a strike of lightning, or you hear thunder, or the phone goes out. But there's this association with like lightning and thunder and these gods or demigods or whatever they are. So then when Kim Cattrall shows up, they show her going by the window, but it's like they have her on a dolly. Like you can't see her like walking. She moves like these ghost creatures, So it's like she could be one of them, like a good, like an angelic being in a way that you don't realize. So nothing is as it seems. The hero isn't the typical hero. So I wonder how far it goes. It's just an interesting thought, because the way they had her move, because it's very specific how she moves, because only these ghost warrior, like supernatural beings, move that way. They give this mention of the hell of being cut to pieces, or like there are many hells, and the Chinese have a lot of hells. And then they mentioned that this woman played by Kim Cattrall is a lawyer, and they said, what the hell is Gracie Law doing here? Her name's Gracie Law. And it is interesting because it's like they're thinking of her as being like really bad because she's a lawyer. But what she was doing at the airport was trying to save a girl from being nabbed or whatever, exploited, trafficked, basically. So what she's doing is really, really good work. And so I'm going along more so with this idea of her being an angelic presence, which would also, spoiler alert, maybe perhaps explain some of the improbable success that they have, and the way that some of them have almost no fear facing off against these demons as they do, to rescue girls and others too from the hands of the people who do this, like trafficking and other criminal activities, deplorable criminal activities. The movie, he's like, who are these people that we're dealing with, and he's like, this Lo Pan that I ran over or through, who is this? And then they explain, and that is the big truth drop. So here's what he says. It's like, the old man, the uncle, explains a little bit. He has spirit medium powers like the immortals. His flesh and his bones are atomized. He becomes a dream. And, he's talking about the magic, like the way that he does. He changes his appearance, and he's a very, like ethereal being, I guess you could say. So they go to this brothel to buy her back, the one that got kidnapped. And they refer to them as slavers. And they keep mentioning, you can't go to the police. They keep mentioning, like, a search warrant is too complicated. And so they send him in as a dumb American guy who's, like, radiating innocence in a way, but then is absolutely down with buying a human being to do whatever with. It's something like they all know about because they're all in touch with like this underworld here. And then they introduce this like green journalist, like this lady who looks like she's from like a home cooking magazine or something like that, way too well-meaning and everything to be able to be entering this kind of underworld area to infiltrate and get a news story for her small-time magazine or whatever it is, newsletter or whatever it is, to get the scoop about this like very serious organized crime underworld that does all these things. And so they introduce her, but she has a role. So it's kind of revealing maybe some darker truths about things that could be out there not far from where you are. And so it's the reality of it is shocking and scary, and when they show the scenes of somebody being restrained and this type of thing, like the business of this human trafficking and what it entails, is just unsettling. The unsettling part of this movie, but the three warriors appear, and then there's like an earthquake and lightning and everything, and they kidnap the kidnapped woman, which is for her it's kind of like going from bad to worse. Somehow she knows that. I would have thought she's being rescued by some kind of supernatural good power or something, because it runs them all these rats out, these sick people right out of there. And the madame who farms them out gets zapped with lightning and gets blasted through a wall in one of the funniest moments of the movie, which there are many. And yeah, they come and rescue the beautiful girl, who's damsel in distress, and take her to, again, spoiler alert, they take her to be married to the creepy old guy who's got to marry somebody because he wants to become flesh again, which is very interesting. That somebody who's got immortality in a way, is power, all the wealth, all the power, all the control. He's got everything. And what does he want? Well, he wants to just have flesh and blood and live the mortal life. Because he has everything here, but he wants out of here. He's played the video game of life. He's transcended it. He's won. But he has to keep playing. You've won the game. You've flipped. It's like the old video games. You flip the score over back to the zeros, and you're so much more skilled. You can play it to the end already. You don't want to do it again. I mean, maybe once for nostalgia's sake or something, but you don't want to do it again and again. That's the nightmare. That's the hell of it, right? So that could be a huge truth drop there, that he just wants to get out. And I think it's interesting that they focus on how the ladies have green eyes. Well, the one, then the other, but the green eyes are significant in the movie. But why would that be? Oh, because Chinese don't have green eyes usually. Well, that could be part of it, maybe. But green, what does it represent? It's the earth chakra. It's the heart. It's the flesh and blood of the Mother Earth, creative realm, the created realm, rather. And so at this point, then they realize, well, where'd they go? Well, they got kidnapped. See, they went to this den of iniquity. They couldn't use violence going in there to just rescue her. They couldn't get a warrant. They couldn't call the police because police don't want to get killed, So they said, they were going to get her out of there, but then these ghost beings took her. So then they figure out where they went, and it's just like a video game, because now you defeated that level, and now you have the next level where, they're in this Wong's place, whatever it is, and it's, that's the most cutthroat den, the most well-protected building. You can't infiltrate there. And so it's like, I thought that was the previous one. Now this one's the one you really can't do, but they have to. And so they form a plan to sneak in and spring her out. So when they do this is an interesting thing, because the building that they're in, this headquarters of the main bad guy there, is really, really deep. Really deep. And they keep mentioning, like, how many levels does it have? It keeps going down farther. So Jack and his sidekick go to this Wing Kong trading company, this building that has like no bottom. It has so many levels going down that's impenetrable, and nobody could ever infiltrate it or rescue anybody out of there, because the main Lo Pan's, it's Lo Pan's place, and this 1,000-year-old being, immortal being, is just like a ghostly entity or whatever, has it all super protected, and like nobody's getting in there and stealing anything of his. So they're talking about, they bring in, because Jack and his sidekick went there on their own to get Jack and Wang went there to get her out. So then back at the restaurant, the Dragon of the Black Pool, they're talking about it, and he's using like some occult chart. And he's like, a goat butts its head against the hedge and gets its horns entangled. And so it's Egg Shen. They brought him in, the bus driver, and he's the local authority on Lo Pan, and he's been doing work figuring it out to figure out how to defeat him, because that's what he's all about. And he said, we have to gather our strength. And he said, we shall bring order out of chaos. So that there's a big old truth drop there. I don't know if it means it's Masonic, but probably does. Probably does, that the people making this are Masonic. There's masonry everywhere. And old world construction, like reappropriated ancient hidden history buildings with secret passageways and all kinds of tunnels and depths. It just goes down farther and farther and farther, endless levels almost, and way beyond what anybody would realize how far down the building actually goes. And so his advice is pretty good. Actually, I think that there would be some truth drops in there, because he's saying, that the picture of difficulty is at the beginning. Because, well, another aspect, I think, of the whole thing, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, take it for what it's worth. I'm not saying this is going to change your life or anything, okay? It's just a movie, right? Egg is talking, and he's like, there's the Chinese mix everything up. There's Taoism, Buddhists, and Confucianists. We take what we want and we leave the rest, just like your salad bar. He's a polymath, right? And so the bad guy, Lo Pan, he relies on the fact that they rely on the fact of conflict that he feeds. Basically, let me get it exactly right, because what I think they're saying is that, I think he's saying that the bad guy, Lo Pan, who Egg wants to get and defeat and kill and vanquish, whatever, is this demon, the bad guy, and this demon, Lo Pan, he feeds off and relies upon his victims. He lives and feeds off of the energy that they give. It's from the conflict. He can manipulate and control and be doing what he wants to be doing, gain what he wants to gain, and get what he wants to get by getting this energy out of it by mixing things up, which isn't necessarily in itself good or bad, but it doesn't stop there with him, right? But it's something you have to understand about how they work. Because maybe the culture itself mixes things up, like with religions, Taoist, alchemy, sorcery, it's some good and bad, it's all mixed up. And all movement in the universe is caused by tension between positive and negative furies. And when the furies are out of balance, as they are in Lo Pan, the people turn into a demon forever, okay? And they exist as these beings who are repulsive and evil, and they live only to torment people. They exist only as a curse on people, and that's why they must be vanquished. And so I think it's just really the biggest truth drop of the whole movie, perhaps, right there. If the negative furies are out of balance in a being, then they're cursed, and they live forever existing as a demon, and they exist to plague the living. And so then Kim Cattrall's listening, and she asks, what is he, a ghost or what? To which they reply, he plays at being a man, a creature of vast, dark, destructive power. There's some strange imagery in it where there's a scene, the guys get trapped in the architecture, and it fills with salt water, like they're going to drown, but then they get captured. And then they're getting beaten for information, like with magic. He makes this like red ball appear, and then he blows on it, and it flies like 6 feet and hits him in the gut. It's like a COVID. Because it's a red ball. It doesn't have little spikes, but he blows on it, flies and hits Jack Burton in the stomach, because he's like, fight me like a man, is that all you got? And he's like, oh, and then it's just basically spreading disease. The rich man, David Lo Pan, rolls out, and he's just this crusty old, it's so funny because he's horrifyingly old, like, he's supposed to be 1,000 years old, and it's played by this younger guy. It's a very charismatic actor, actually, but he's acted by him, but then they also made this, like, a translucent puppet who is, that is so well done, because they use it in these scenes where like light is coming out of them, and so they use it for that as like a special effects prop. But it's kind of like, I make this joke sometimes about how sometimes some people, usually not me, sometimes me maybe, but some people are so white. If they were any more white, they would be clear, like a jellyfish. It's like if you get to a point, you're whiter than an albino, then you're a jellyfish, right? But it's funny that, he's 1,000 years old. He's turns into this demonic being, this entity. It's played by James Hong, by the way, who plays David Lo Pan. He's much older now, obviously, but anyway, he's a great actor. And so I would say, like, this character, this presentation of him is comical, where they made him up to look so old, so crusty. It's like beyond Mr. Burns, beyond Emperor Palpatine, after his sunburn or whatever. He's really, it's really striking. But he drops some truth. That you're talking to a guy who's 1,000 years old. You're going to hear some truth drops here in this John Carpenter movie. So it's like, what is this Lo Pan? And Wang's telling Jack about him before he gets wheeled in. Lo Pan's nothing like you can understand. And so he's like, there are many mysteries, many unanswerable questions, even in a life as short as yours. We shouldn't ask. And he's like, he's 2,000 years old, actually. I'm not going to waste another 2,000 years hanging around here, Says, I thought Lo Pan was this, like different look. He's like, shut up, Mr. Burton. You were not brought upon this world to understand and ask these questions, And one of the questions that David Lo Pan has for him about the girl was that what province is she from? And then he wants to know, what was her father a holy man? Tell me, I must know. Like, it's very significant. I think it's interesting they put that in there. So then he's like, he asks David Lo Pan a real interesting question: are you crazy? Is that your problem? And his answer is very telling, because he says no. And this is a really significant part of the movie, where he says, no, my problem is this place. This place is my tomb. I'm buried here. A young man, a king, a warrior is entombed in this old man's crippled body. And all I need is a woman, Mr. Burton, a special kind of woman with dragon green eyes to make me whole again, young again, so that I may rule the universe from beyond this grave. Qingdai, the god of the East, is his demon. See, he answers to another one: the god I must appease in order to regain my heart and my blood. And so he has to sacrifice a girl to the demon, right? To make the demon happy, so then he can rule the universe from beyond the grave. And Jack Burton says, or you could check into the psycho ward. And 2,000 years and you can't find a broad to fit the bill? You must be doing something seriously wrong there, Lo Pan. Dave. Jack, you seem to be one to know the difficulties between men and women. So rarely does it work out. And yet we all keep trying, like fools. That's maybe another truth drop there. And then he sees his friends coming in on the security monitor, and he goes, now this pisses me off to no end, and he wheels off. It's so funny. I remember seeing that as a kid. It's like, to have this guy presented as like the oldest of old men, and then he talks like one of your friends, He's kind of cool in that way. He like looks at the monitor. Now that pisses me off to no end. He rolls off because he's going to put a stop to his friends showing up to help out, And so he sends these freaking demon warriors to escort them,
You're not put on this earth to get it, Mr. Burton. Now, this really pisses me off to no end.
His friends are in the elevator, and so the guy is telling them as this gas gets pumped in that's going to knock them out, which doesn't affect him because he's a ghost warrior or whatever. But he says, so business is going to get interesting. Will be as trade restrictions ease up, we're going to be introducing some really new products from Peking that will be really unusual, and they are getting gas and they pass out and fall down in the elevator. And it just made me think at the beginning of the worldwide massive hoax about the thing coming out of China that spreads, but is actually doesn't affect the people who know about it. It's black magic, just like this is supposed to be black magic that these guys do. But there were these videos of these doctors and different people passing out in elevators and other places, but just they were stricken by the exhaustion from dealing with it, or stricken by the thing itself, and it made them fall face first, pass out, which is absolute nonsense. Nobody ever saw it. Whatever. Just want to add it to the list of 1,000, 10,000 things that just never will make sense about this worldwide massive hoax that they've pulled off there. So anyway, moving on to the next thing. But it's just like every single scene in this movie has a little something like that to reveal, I think. And just like with They Live, you could do this, and I'm sure plenty of people have done something like this with They Live, but I don't think anybody's done this movie, Big Trouble in Little China, exactly like I am now. And of course, the very next scene, he's like, okay, so the walls are 2 or 3 feet thick, which isn't the way we do construction now, and it's all bricks all the way down. And he's like, he's like, this demon has a plan for us, otherwise we'd be dead as doornails already. The 10-foot tall roadblock, yeah, Lo Pan, that guy. But what is this about? Well, it's myths and legends. I don't want to insult you, Jack, but go ahead and insult me, he says. And he's giving truth drops here now. So he's like, it's about all sorts of scary things. About an ancient army of the dead, the spirit city, and monkey sacrifices, and the first sovereign emperor of China, the mad monarch, who federated our 7 states, defeated Lo Pan, and imposed upon him the horrible curse of no flesh in 272 BC. A lot of Chinese hear these things when we're kids. Then we grow up and pretend not to believe them. No horse shit, Jack. I don't blame you. I'm Chinese and I don't want to believe it, but it's for real. It's sorcery, Chinese black magic. So, again, I'm not saying I would advocate believing in that, but it's interesting, like, after he tells them that, they have to kind of hide themselves, get back into this, like they're restrained, and he's like, blindfolds, they have to remember to put the blindfolds on so they're not seen as being somebody who is able to see, and being able to see is very, very powerful, that they are now fighting this ghost warrior creature thing, and he can take bullets and everything, but when he's got a knife held up to his neck, he's vulnerable. But he does this thing where he has this superpower of puffing up. It's like hulking out, but he puffs up. Kind of goes Willy Wonka in the end, but at this point in the movie, it's a taste of it. Yeah, so the building just keeps going down farther and farther and farther, and they get to a point, there's this big well that Jack almost falls into. It's interesting when they have the people captive, the other members of the group, the journalist is allowed to write, but the lawyer is gagged in her cage. And that's very telling there. They allow the journalist to write about things. Doesn't mean it'll get published. But the lawyers, they gag. And the way criminals deal with outsiders and people under their influence, it isn't always brutality, violence. That's cartoon stuff. The way they really deal with things is that way. They pay them off, things like that. That's how they gag the lawyers. And they give them busy work in their little cage, give them the information, let them write about it, But I like this scene, this is where Jack is really like the hero. I mean, he does pick the right direction to go. He shoots a bad guy, which he has trouble with. It gives him pause. He's not cavalier about it. It's a life. And, he's fighting and releasing the prisoners, But it's interesting, the ones that go in to rescue them, David Lo Pan mentioned something when they were in the building. He said, I smell the blood and flesh of humans in the building. Go find them and capture them and boil them, boil that flesh or whatever, because he's jealous of them because they're humans, flesh and blood. The entities that's what is perhaps behind the hatred of the evil ones that cause the trouble and plague the living. They're a plague to the living if you let them, And they do wear red and black in this movie. The movie where they talk about shaking the pillars of heaven, and then there's a scene here where they're swimming around with these pipes. They have seawater in it, but why would they have seawater, in this trading company, beneath this trading company, this building that has seemingly no bottom to it? It's just like, it kind of maybe references Dante's, levels of hell, and it does. They do mention like this, send them to this hell or that hell, and there's no like, hey, wait a minute, we're not in hell. What are you talking about sending, to another hell? You have to be in a hell in the first place. It's kind of like, oh well, you kind of are in a hell there. So I hope that's not a truth drop, but it's not heaven. We know that we don't live in heaven exactly here. There seems to be some things that aren't heavenly here that we have to deal with or come across. So, yeah, I thought maybe another interesting truth drop. Now, the shirt that Jack Burton wears in this it looks to me like it's a variation form of the alchemical symbol of Mercury with like a crown antenna, like one of these old world like antenna things on the top of it, as if it were a building, but it's a hat on a man, but the shape of the head, the design there, it looks to me like that type of a crown antenna. And this is a good part of the movie, a good scene where they release, they're escaping and they get all the trafficked people and the prisoners out, and in the Egg Foo Young Express tour bus driven by Mr. Egg Foo Young himself, So it's just a good scene. The yellow bus driving away. And he's like, we made it. But see, Kim Cattrall got nabbed by this, kind of a beast thing. It's, maybe the representing the beast of the system, but it's a cartoonish thing. I just saw the part where it turns its head and screams at her, and I just have to say again, I mean, Kim Cattrall in this movie, it's just the beauty. It's just, I can't think of a way that she could have been more beautiful. It's just extremely beautiful. Beautiful. So, but that contrast between her face screaming and this beast's face. The beast is just I don't know, like a Yeti type thing or whatever. But yeah, Kim Cattrall is so beautiful in this. And the journalist makes a remark. She says, after she's escaped, that what this is? This is like some radical Alice in Wonderland, isn't it? And it is. And when Lo Pan's in his powerful form, as he appears in this scene where Kim Cattrall, Greasy Law, is with Miao Yin, the Chinese girl with green eyes, played by Susie Pai. She, who is also beautiful, by the way, and very beautiful. I neglected to mention that just because I was familiar with Kim Cattrall. Lo Pan, David Lo Pan. The big reveal is when he's got her. Initially, he tries to touch her, and his hand faces through her. See, there are things they could appear that they could do, but they can't do it. It's all illusion. And he says, you know, my soul swims in black magic and is scattered across time. And it yearns for flesh and da-da-da. So there's that. Egg's place, he's like, this place is a dump. He's like, this guy's rich. And he goes, well, this place is not to Western eyes, but the stuff in these bottles is priceless. Well, there's only a few bottles there, and one bottle that I see, it looks like it has red mercury in it. So again, Jack's wearing that alchemical shirt with his good luck and everything, and then now they're powering up, which is, again, feeding into this thing of video games and everything. It's so perfect, this movie, the angle of just looking at it as a source and an embodiment of what makes a great video game in a movie is all here. And then there's a huge thing that I didn't notice till just now, where they're going down beneath his lair to power up, you know, in his secret little basement alchemy shop, and they have a map of the flat Earth, basically. Not a map of flat Earth, but it's a circle with the center hole cut out for this brass pole going up through, which is, it's like the bat, you know, when Batman and Robin go down the bat pole to the bat cave type thing. And then it's a black hole, and then it's got green light coming up from underneath it, which looks like the Northern Lights. And so it's the as above, so below. They're going to go below and use the magic, alchemy, you know, going to the black cold sun down there, the Wonderland, or whatever they call it, Dreamland. And the map, it's right there, just like that. And what is down there? Well, Lo Pan is down there. He's like, what is down there? And he goes, what is the universe? Or he's like, where is down there? He says, and then Egg answers, where is the universe? So huge truth drop right there. I mean, literally, it's a truth drop, because then they have to drop down the pole, and they do. And when they're down there, of course, there's masonry. It's burnt looking. It's huge, you know, arches and all that stuff. He's like, where in the hell are we? Which is, you know, not where are we, where in the hell are we? Underneath Chinatown. And it's like it's a sewer, but it's not a sewer, exactly. And so, yeah. There he goes. He's looking at it, and he's like, that is not water. And then Egg says, that's black blood of the earth. And then Jack says, you mean oil? And then he laughs. He says, I mean black blood of the earth. He didn't say no, because I haven't really covered it on my channel. I've mentioned it, though, just from my own research. That it is, oil is seemingly just something that just emanates from the earth. It's not liquefied dinosaurs. It's not biotic. It's abiotic. A meaning not, like asymptomatic, not symptomatic. Abiotic. It's not biotic. Okay, so it's best described, I think, actually as black blood of the earth. There you go. It's talking more truth, baby, he says. 1,000 years ago, a huge earthquake turned the world upside down. Many normal people were killed. Many unnatural people roamed free to commit great offenses against the gods. Interesting, he said 1,000 years ago. And the huge earthquakes, you know, huge earthquakes. And the stones that are down there are not buried. They were above ground at one point, probably. And they look like they are combusted, somewhat melted, somewhat almost just like burnt black. In this part of the movie, it's kind of weird and it wouldn't make sense, but the guys are doing black magic, and they take the two green-eyed girls, they give them swords, and then they lift them up to the ceiling, and they're holding the swords. The swords are glowing, and then they touch this orb in the sky that lights up this golden figurine. Its eyes light up green, and it's the savage heart. They tamed the savage heart, whatever. But it makes me think of the images of these old world representatives of this like Lady Liberty type thing, and this lady is it's a beautiful woman in a gown, which they were in, and then they have a sword, and the sword's giving off light. So then they go down this chute, this slide, and they land on this huge pile of fish. Right after they're talking about 1,000 years ago. And it made me think of Pisces, because there's fish everywhere. Fish everywhere. And then he says, well, now for some more bad news, but we're almost, we're getting there, but just a little bit more bad news first, but we're almost there. For something that he's been waiting to do, which is defeat this demon thing, Lo Pan. And then Jack's like, well, what? This gets worse, But the point here that I want to make, though, is that it's kind of like they're entering a new age, and they have a mission to do. And they have help. They have assistance. They have the good with them. They have this good aura about them and this confidence with what they're doing. And that is really great. And he's like, so they says 2,000, what was it, 2,258 years ago? I think that's the number. I'll get it exactly here. Just bear with me. Because I have to kind of watch it as I'm recording this movie review. And they're eating fish like candy bars. But he's smiling when he says, more bad news. 2,258 years ago, the first sovereign emperor Qin Shi Huang, subjugated Lo Pan and made him of low flesh, or only an evil dream. In order to be whole again, he had to find this certain girl of his prophecy and marry her to appease the god of the East. But to appease the emperor, he had to kill her. And he's like, why are we talking Chinese history when we have stuff to do? And he's like, okay, well, we're getting ready to strike the final blow. If we reach Lo Pan, then the power in this flask will, what's he say? I want to get this right. Because he's using black magic, it looks like, even though he's on the good side. But, it is what it is for this movie, okay? Because he wants to defeat Lo Pan. I say he's good because he doesn't, they don't want him to kill the innocent woman. So, when they reach Lo Pan, they want him to be of flesh. And so in this flask will be our only hope against the boldest satyr of the underworld, the ultimate evil spirit. Okay? I guess it's not black magic he's using. But he's saying that only a dream can kill a dream. So I've waited for this a long time. He said, the evil dream will die. And so they want him to become flesh, so he can kill the fleshly part of the demon, right? But in the flask, I think, is the dream, their dream. So it's the good, the power of good in a way. It gives them a superpower. It's a power up, It's like, good medicine, as it were. So I love the scene where they power up. What's in the flask? Egg, magic potion? Yeah, thought so, good. But they drink it, and there's this part where they're like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good, I feel pretty spry, pretty sprightly, It's kind of like you go through the truth journey, you do feel that way. A lot of this movie is about going through that truth journey, the awakening process. And like I said, he made this movie right before, I think this is the one movie before They Live, which is about waking up to things. But this is also about waking up. And so you do feel pretty good. But they're not quite there yet. As I'm watching it, this beholder shows up, And I knew this from D&D, this creature, it's this demon or whatever. It looks like a COVID, basically. But it's got a face. It's got eyes all over it, you know, an all-seeing eye, you know, and whatever it sees, Lo Pan sees, you know. And it was funny because, like, Jack Burton shoots it. He can't kill it, really, you know, but as much of it is manifested from flesh, they can injure it at least, you know. And so, but what's the point of what he's doing? Well, he's going to become flesh so he can live out the earthly pleasures with the women. And that's what we're told in the Book of Enoch, that the demons wanted to do, was to live out the earthly pleasures with human women. So there was that. You know, that theme runs through it. And so they're going through and looking for him and getting ready for the fight. You know, he's got his underground palace, but he refers to it as a tomb. And it's kind of funny because it's like temple, tomb, temple, tomb. Everything's got to be a temple or a tomb. Well, that's his lair, the trading company, is exactly that. But for his ceremony, it's really well done. This whole fight scene, the cinematography of it, the artistic aspect, and the set, it looks like an Ozzy Osbourne concert set. It's awesome that way. Neon lights, escalators, big skull with a stairway coming down, which is like Masonic, basically. I mean, the ladder lean, the stairway up, kind of almost the same. The beast is there. I guess he got an invitation, you know, to the wedding. And one of the funny scenes, they come up to a door, it's locked. It's one of these paper doors. And Jack says, fuck it. And he takes a knife and cuts through the paper and reaches around and unlocks it from the other side. Because sometimes evil is dumb. But they go to this bar and they pour these steamy elixirs in these goblets and drink it. And what does it do? Huge buzz. And, you know, they drink their power-ups. And it's just, and he says, you can see things no one else can see and do things no one else can do. And it's all real? Yes, as real as Lo Pan, meaning it's the magic. And they emerge out of a smiling Buddha's belly, which is kind of like indicating a reincarnation, because they're coming right out of the birth, B-E-R-T-H, birth of Buddha. And to me, Buddhism is representing reincarnation. And then the demon is holding the needle of love. There's predictive programming, retrocausality for you, because he's going to poke them with the needle, and he's like, oh, Chingdai, you shake the heavens and descend from the east, from Wuhan, in order to conquer the universe. If you grant me flesh and blood, you know, he's offering this, you know, blood sacrifice, guide my hand, and he's basically giving her the jab. As I insert this needle into Mao Yen, he's like, no, let him complete the ceremony, then he is ours for certain. So he's giving her the inoculation, and somehow it works for him where he starts to get flesh and blood, which is what he wants, because he wants to be mortal, which is kind of weird, you know. And they finally stab that virus-looking thing, the beholder, you know, the floating thing with it has the tentacles. It looks like the representation of the spike proteins on the thing, and so they, you know, the needle goes in her, and then the virus goes away. It's total predictive programming. It's total, absolute, freaking retrocausality predictive programming. The reason, one of the many reasons, I think, but one of the main ones that I wanted to do this video, because when I saw that, I'm like, holy crap, could it get any more freaking ridiculously prescient to our time, as he's jabbing, he's like forcibly mandating jabbing in the needle of these hypnotized women as this ritual marriage ceremony sacrament, right? The demon is doing it himself. You know, the needle of love, he called it, you know, and in these occult, or these, well, cults or secret societies, they do that initiation rite of the poking in of the needle. Usually it's in the chest, but it's a very, very symbolic thing to initiate people in. You know, just like in some ways the mask can be, but usually it's a blindfold. Okay, so it's the blindfold and the needle specifically, but they're both in this movie, the blindfold and the needle. And the fact is, like, almost everybody's initiated to the point of the blindfold, right? And they want to get you to past the needle point. But then, in a way, it's their mistake because they make themselves vulnerable by doing it. But he's giddy with excitement. And then they get attacked by these kind of robots, you know, because they're these golems that come after them. It's a man wearing a suit, but it's not clear the way the movie presents it. It's not really clear that it's a man in a suit. It moves like it's really, really heavy, and it's heavier than a normal person would be, and it's also very it's very slow moving, and it almost has mechanical sounds. And there's a lot of atmospheric, like electricity in this old world building with the neon fluorescent lighting and some comic elements going on with the fight scene itself. But Egg and Lo Pan face off and shine these it's purple versus a green light, and they do battle, and it's actually Egg is the purple light and Lo Pan is the green light, and they have these like samurai avatars which look like the AI, or not the AI when I'm thinking of AI, but the robots, these golems that were the two golems that they showed, which are men in suits battling each other. It's kind of like a virtual reality. It's a battle in virtual reality, and he fights back against the guy who shoots electricity by using a fan that is a reflector. And they have some torches and some candles, but there's a lot of electric light. And it's kind of neat that way, where it mixes like modern day technology from the 80s. The 80s had everything, with some of the old world elements and aesthetics, we'll say. And they have a giant skull, so there's that whole, like, giants and titans and that type of stuff. And so we're nearing the end, and I've done enough spoiler alerts. I'll do the last one. Jack throws a knife, misses, and Lo Pan throws the knife back at him, and Jack catches it and throws it into Lo Pan's head and kills the demon, because he's been made flesh, right? So he dies right like that, and he falls back and he knocks over something, or the thunder claps when he dies, and then these golden Buddhas start falling over in a chain reaction, kind of like if you saw my Stonehenge video, where from the movie Vacation, Chevy Chase bumps into Stonehenge and knocks it down in a chain reaction. It's kind of like that. What does it represent? I'm not totally sure, but I think resonance, chain reaction, significant about defeating the evil. At the moment of defeating the evil, that you have these atmospheric energy collector things. They're not just golden statues. They're alchemical, because they're not solid gold. It's a shell. It's kind of like a paint almost, but it's to pull electricity from the air. Amazing part here, because of something I saw in the video made by Iwar. This amazing documentary that you need to see, the 6-hour one called The Lost History of the Flat Earth. Just incredible work. I've almost seen the whole thing. There's a picture in one, it's a ceiling that's dipping down in this cave. I think it was from that one. But you see it all the time, and it's from melted buildings from electricity arcing. And it shows it right here when the electrical, when the guy who's controlling electricity, that ghost warrior, I call it, he's shooting it around, and he zaps this old world structure he's standing in, because his because Lo Pan died, and he melts the ceiling, and it's glowing. It's like molten stone, and it sags down. Wow, thanks, John Carpenter. You really showed truth in plain sight there about our history 1,000 years ago that this happened. And, this huge calamity, the earthquakes, and then the electrical arcing that did that. And I think it does have to do with spiritual aspects. I'm totally getting onto this whole thing. It's, the millennial reign at the end of it, perhaps, or maybe the beginning. I don't know. I mean, it was all predicted in the Bible. I think it's just already happened. The ceiling falls down. It appears to be wood, or they make a sound of wood, but that could be a mistake in the sound production. And they do say the comment right afterwards, we got to get out of here. This whole place is melting. It's just truth in plain sight, just obvious right there. And the electricity guys climbing up through the hole because they're going up through these holes, and they drop a Buddha statue down on them, and that does him. But when he dies, then all that electrical arcing stops. And, they're ascending, see, so they've done their job. They're just trying to escape. They're ascending, and the bell's ringing, and they're getting out. It's like an alarm bell, and they're evacuating the building to get to that yellow bus, which they basically do, and get out. It's not so easy. Or they get to the truck, actually, his truck. But it's basically the climax of the movie through. And at the very end, he says that, they gave it their best shot, shook the pillars of heaven. He's driving the Pork Chop Express, and he said, the next time poison arrows are coming down from the sky, just listen to what I say here on the old Pork Chop Express. Just give me your best shot. And then the beast emerges from the back of his truck. I'm UAP of the UAP Channel. Douglas is my name, and reviewing movies is part of my game here. And that concludes the review of Big Trouble, Little China, 1986, by John Carpenter. Great movie. Can't emphasize that enough as far as a fun watch. It's just a kind of a silly, fun action movie, but there's a lot of truth to it, because this is the guy who made They Live. Just before he made They Live. Big Trouble in Little China. Big Trouble from Wuhan, perhaps. It's very truth-infused. Okay, I'm UAP. I'm out. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
You better be there, or there'll be big trouble in your little China. Good evening.